You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself. He killed himself.
Welcome back to Posting Through It. I'm Jared.
I'm Mike.
Thanks for joining us another week. If you like the show and want to help us keep going, we've got a tip jar linked down in the description of this episode. Consider throwing a few bucks in there. It helps us out a ton. We've got a nice long interview with journalist Kim Kelly coming up, but there's a story that I feel like we just have to talk about. It's like squarely Posting Through It territory. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, the two guys that Trump picked to run the FBI for some for some reason, are now sort of walking back some of their conspiracy theories, and it's not leaving that part of the MAGA base very happy. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are both guys who I guess do have some credentials in national security. Dan Bongino was a former Secret Service guy. Kash Patel has worked in sort of the national security state at various points, but have really dedicated their recent careers to just bloviating deep state conspiracy theories to varying...
To posting through it, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, they've just become like professional posters. And now they get to decide like who goes to jail for posts, which is kind of rich. But yeah, so in recent interviews, in recent, now that they are like in positions of power, I guess I should say, they're really starting to walk that back. The clip at the beginning of the show was them talking about Jeffrey Epstein, big conspiracy just heyday around the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Mike, we were actually hanging out in New York that day.
This is true. So basically, for listeners who don't know, because I feel like we've suggested it sort of in the past, Jared came to stay with me. I was living in Queens at the time, and just to hang out in the weekend, just hang out together. And we didn't really have a plan for the day, but we may have made ourselves inebriated. I believe. Is that the safe way to put it?
I think, that's like, we can go with that.
We'll go with that. And went in that state to the Met, to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and at one point became quite fixated on a bowl, a bowl in the Islamic section that was bubbling a little bit too much, and. Then when we got out, I believe we had like some sort of like we had like bubble tea or something.
Yeah.
like children in the basement of the Plaza Hotel, and found out that Jeffrey Epstein was no longer with us. I guess is the safe way.
And then we ate Italian food and had a conversation that you could not ask me to summarize at gunpoint about what we think happened.
Yes, because I mean, let's get to the point here. There's a lot of reasons why Jeffrey Epstein's death made people suspicious.
If he did what he's accused of doing, and there is a hell of a lot of reason to believe that he was doing that. I mean, I guess he never went to court for the most recent things, and he cut a deal in some prior instances. But I mean, it's just, if it was at the scale and involving as many powerful people as it seems to have had, all I'm saying is there are a lot of people in the world that would have not wanted Jeffrey Epstein to take the stand under oath.
And there's also a lot of theories about his connections to intelligence, foreign intelligence. We've heard like Israeli intelligence. We've heard things like United States intelligence. I don't actually know the truth. And the fact that none of us really know the hard truth makes the whole thing a lot weirder. And it made it even more suspicious when he suddenly killed himself.
Well, Dan and Kash were right there with us. Not literally, maybe spiritually, given, how that day went. But now they're just like throwing cold water on the whole thing. The quote from Kash Patel is, a suicide when you see one. And that's what it was. And it's kind of hard to wrap your head around it. There's like a few, I think, possible ways to think about it. One is that they never really bought into this stuff. It was, kind of a cynical power grab kind of thing, audience building kind of thing. I like to imagine what you see in the movies where they swear in and then they immediately get taken into like a windowless room and just Clockwork Orange style play alternative angles of the Kennedy assassination and alternative angles of like Epstein's jail cell. And they're told about like aliens and somebody like pulls off their head and reveals that lizard people are real, and they just see so much that they're like horrified into silence. But that is probably not what happened.
I thought Bongino's reaction was even funnier because, no offense to Mr. Bongino, but he has a lot of dumb guy energy, a very particular palpable kind of like, whoa, whoa, what's going on? Like type of energy. He, it seems to me like you've got what you have here is you've got guys who are like very underqualified for the positions that they have by any metric in law enforcement, by conservative standards, meaning the conservative movement. Had liberals appointed people like this to these positions, they would have burned the country to the ground, right? They're not qualified. And so you get these guys in there. They seem to be like just nominally doing the job. I mean, there's been this big thing about Kash, who sadly is from Garden City, which is like not very far from where I grew up as a kid in Long Island. And he was like flying to Islanders games, which is like exactly what I would do if I had the FBI plane, right? I would fucking fly to Islander games as well, and just like be like, this is great. I'm the head of the FBI now. It's like I'll see you center ice. Yeah. So I mean, like he's not really taking the job seriously, and then all of a sudden now he's out there and he's kind of just downplaying this one thing that was at the center of all these QAnon guys' fixations.
I think it's probably too soon to say like what this will mean to sort of the conspiratorial part of MAGA, which is a lot of it. And it's a lot of the media side, even the big guns, because they're not very happy about this, And I was listening to QAnon Anonymous the other day, friends of the pod there, and they did an episode about the state of the R conspiracy subreddit. One of them made this observation that like, when people who have conspiratorial worldviews run up against something like this, there's often like kind of one of two responses, right? It's like you can dig in further, and now Bongino and Patel are part of the conspiracy. They've been compromised in some way. Oh, the Jeffrey Epstein binder stunt. Like you take the Laura Loomer track of like, wow, now they're covering for pedophiles.
Right.
Or you just develop like a deep cynicism. It's not really, I don't know that there's many people that really just spin on their heels and do a 180 and are like subscribing to the New York Times after these statements, right? But like, I'm just curious if this will have lasting impact, because historically, it seems like almost nothing does on this movement. I don't know how it keeps going, but it's just like, what do they call it? Like Teflon Don, right? It's just like,
Teflon
it's just like
Don.
Shit bounces off of him and bounces off his movement.
There are 2 points that I'd like to just quickly make. The first one is that Laura Loomer seems to be like on whatever scale of purity, MAGA purity there are, she's like at the 0 mark. She stands at the most pure crystallized MAGA. She is it, with Trump above it. Trump is not part of this scale I'm talking about. And like Laura is for her, if she's the ultimate in purity spiral MAGA stuff. It's like the equivalent of the hardcore neo-Nazi, no mixing of races and all this, that, she's of for the MAGA movement. And when she says something is bullshit, that's the core shit right there. The second thing is this administration has let people down on the Epstein front more than once now. And we did an entire thing where we talked about, like, we did a full 20-minute segment already about those binders where you had these ridiculous influencers like Mike Cernovich, like hiding behind the binder, and like Jack Posobiec, like showing that he had the binder. And then the material had already been previously published 3 years ago. It seems like they are not very interested in telling you the unpublished truth about Jeffrey Epstein, a man who had discernible ties to the president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's to really crack open the book on Epstein would get a lot of people in this government, close to this government, playing important roles supporting this government in hot water if it went to the extent that it is alleged to, and there's plenty of reason to think it did. It could completely fuck up foreign relations with a lot of countries. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the Trump administration would not be terribly excited about cracking the lid open on this, like so many of Trump's followers got the impression that he might be.
I mean, in many ways, Trump and his worldview, his real worldview, not the kind of thing that like sort of white nationalists see in Trump or whatever, is defending and protecting people exactly like Jeffrey Epstein.
We're going to go now to our chat with Kim Kelly. We talk about labor, metal, anarchism. It's Kim fucking Kelly. What do you expect? You're in for a treat.
And so, as we always ask, very fucking nicely, in the spirit of friendship and solidarity, if you wouldn't mind saying it with us, a little bit loud, a tiny bit proud. Nazi Party!
This is the first time we're chatting in person.
I know.
But it's not the first time we've been publicly associated together, because we were both on the first Adam Waffen kill list. which is like for real heads no. And I was gonna try to rehash that just in case anybody didn't remember. So it was basically, I guess it was like 2019 or something like that. Was it 2019, 2020?
Yes, because that's right around the same time I lost my job.
It was pre-pandemic. There was a guy in the Midwest running an account that had lots of like, for people who don't know this, we should explain. Adam Waffen Division is like an extreme neo-Nazi group, a pro-terror neo-Nazi group with very kind of sleek logos and stuff, right? Like they're very like, kind of, it looks like a very, I don't know, it looks like a professional, outfit, even if it's only like 60 guys who, are extremely racist. This person made a random Telegram video. This is when Telegram had almost absolutely no supervision whatsoever. There was like, now there's more because there's been like lawsuits and things and people are afraid. At the time there was nothing. And this guy made this video and it was just like hard driving guitar and like almost like baseball cards of different people that needed to be killed, and like an end with a gunshot. And one of them was Kim, one of them was me. And then there was a second iteration, just like if you collected the first like amount of Garbage Pail Kids or whatever, and you get like series 2, and Jared was in that group.
Yeah, because I wrote about something that mentioned the first one.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I remember some writers were like, whatever, like I'm on other kill lists. Like it was like the hot kill list for a minute on Twitter.
Yeah, it's like I want to be on the kill list. Anyway, this became a huge, a much bigger thing because Andy No tried to claim that the kill list was fake, and then he did all this stuff about Antifa journalists and stuff like that. And I briefly texted with him about this. I tried to get him on the phone because I told him stop saying it's fake because it's real. I was the one who originally found it. He didn't have the courage to actually get on the phone with me, which is
maybe his fake accent only works in small doses.
So anyway, I wanted to rehash that before we actually talk about important things around labor.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Like looking back, it's kind of funny, but at the time I was not stoked.
Oh, of course not.
I
Because
hated that.
well, it was literally you were on a literal kill list, like, right? Like
Adam Waffen
right?
too. They were spooky.
Yeah, spooky. And they had killed 5 people, right? I mean, Jared was, I think, any more than 5, there's certainly 5. Furthermore, look at the things that were happening around that time, right? There were so many mass shootings, all like, it felt like every few months there would be another like terror attack that was motivated by the Great Replacement stuff or whatever.
And Adam Waffen that was a really like fucked up time in the heavy metal universe, because there was a lot of overlap with Adam Waffen and like the metal world.
Yeah, I didn't want you to get offended. I was about to say like it looked like a metal thing, but I was like, I don't want to offend Kim.
They were totally trying to like get all up in our, like the one guy whose name was like, his nom de gore was like Rape or something. They found him at...
Yes, his name was Rape.
Yeah, and he was just like some little squirrely like Peckerwood. And I remember he was like found it, like people saw him at a black metal show from like a band I knew. And I was like, this is uncomfortably close. I don't like that. Like, and I know like metal has a Nazi problem in general, but usually they're like, they don't go outside about it. You know?
Yeah. Well, metalheads are also a Nazi solution too, and I want to talk to you about that in the sense of like,
what?
Right? Meaning that they're the antidote in many ways too. The communities also.
I was like, damn,
the sigh of relief, listeners. Kim Kelly has her hands over her heart.
I'm clutching. If I could afford pearls, they'd be clutched.
But no, I do have a couple of metal questions to talk about before we get to the more important things.
Great. No one ever wants to talk to me about metal anymore.
I don't know if it's more important, but less important. But anyway,
to me. Oh man, what a stupid job we have.
So you wrote this book that's called Fight Like Hell, which made a lot of noise about a subject that people don't talk about or didn't talk about very much, in those settings, those literary settings. Fight Like Hell, like I said, fantastic. You got a young readers version of it that just came out.
Yeah, it came out on May 6th. It's called Fight to Win: Heroes of American Labor. Because
and it goes through all their like kind of biographies. You sent us a copy.
Yeah, there's a bunch of biographies. There's some new people. I thought it'd be funny to call it Fight Like Heck. And my publisher was like, that would be funny. No. So I had to mix it up a little bit. But I think it's cute. I'm really happy it's out there.
I do think publishers are kind of wrong about some title stuff. And I think Fight Like Heck would be pretty good.
Right? Honestly. Like, but I just, once I started writing books and getting involved in the publishing world, I realized how little authors really have to do with a lot of it. So I'm just kind of like, all right, let it ride. Like, if I can write some stuff, you'll put it out in the world. Fuck it. You can do whatever you want. Just don't make it weird.
So it comes out in 2022. And at the time that it came out, it felt to me like the labor movement in the United States was really on the march. Right? There was a lot of stuff happening. We had this big resurgence in strike activity that happened around 2022. There was like a huge increase in NLRB petitions, National Labor Relations Board. So things were getting, and like all that stuff with Amazon was really kicking off around then, right? So it's a huge, huge thing. It feels like things have kind of slid back again. And I don't know if you agree with that, but that's just my feeling. And I would love to hear you say it's not. But do you think that's the case? And is it really just the election, or is it something else?
The moment you were speaking about, there was so much energy, so much enthusiasm, and so many wins. We were actually seeing a lot of movement forward. And that is something that the American labor movement does not, we don't get a lot of wins generally. Like, we do, but in the grand scheme, when we're having these moments of like, we're really pushing forward, things are really happening, we're like these massive union campaigns across the country are really picking up steam. Like John Deere's going on strike, Kroger's going on strike. ABC News is actually paying attention to labor. The Starbucks Workers United campaign was really going for it. Amazon Workers United, the Amazon labor union were really pulling in those headlines, and they had won their successful election. Like we were having a moment. It was real hot. And one of the reasons that was kind of moving along so smoothly, relatively speaking, historically at least, is like we had, as much as I hate to hand anything to the previous administration, the Biden administration, the one place where a lot of good work was done, a lot of beneficial actions were taken, were in kind of the labor world. You mentioned the NLRB. We had a very pro-union, pro-worker general counsel for the NLRB, Jennifer Abruzzo. She was sick, and she's very active. We had a more democratic, like the board was doing things. It was hearing a lot of cases. It was investigating a lot of unfair labor practices. It was working through its backlog at least quicker than 0 miles per hour. Like things were happening. We had, this nominally pro-union administration that was kind of at least speaking out and not actively trying to crush labor, which again, in the history of American labor is a little bit of a novelty. So that was helpful. It did help for people that care about, optics. It did help that the sitting U.S. president went and walked a picket line with the auto workers, like things like that. It all contributed to this climate where things felt more possible and actively were more possible than they had during the previous Trump regime and during Obama's term and all of these previous moments. And so that's kind of the moment that we're coming off of as we enter this new era of incredibly anti-worker, anti-labor, like Trump officials and Trump cronies and Trump himself, who is like, obviously he doesn't care about workers. He's known for stiffing workers at his properties. Like he doesn't give a shit.
I was going to say, like, even when he does pay them.
Yeah.
Right.
Famously a bad boss. That was his whole brand before he became everyone's problem. But so now, even getting down to the sort of wonkier aspect of the NLRB and labor law, labor legislation, regulations, all this stuff that doesn't necessarily get quite as many headlines because it's a little bit more esoteric unless you're feeling it yourself. You're working in those workplaces or you're trying to organize. Right now, as of, I think actually today, they pulled some more bullshit. I hope we can swear on this because I've already set the tone.
Yeah, you can say whatever the hell you want on here.
Thank God. I don't have much of a filter. That's why I'm freelance. But Gwen Wilcox was supposed to be in the NLRB. Trump fired her illegally. They've been trying to get her job back. All that's like a whole thing. But the most significant aspect of that, besides one nice person getting screwed over, is that the NLRB can't reach a quorum, which sounds incredibly boring. But that means that they can't make any decisions. And for the majority of union elections in this country, like people trying to unionize, they generally, unless they're lucky enough to have their employer voluntarily recognize their union, they're going to have to go through an election process. And that goes through the NLRB. And if the NLRB isn't functional, that union isn't going to get certified in a timely manner, if at all. And that matters. When there are big delays in unions being certified, that gives the boss more time to try and grind them down, to bust the union, to waste money on union avoidance firms. Like, nobody wants to wait to get their union certified. So that's one thing that's really been kind of gumming up the works, not having a functional NLRB. And that's on top of all this like insane slashing of regulations and mass firings throughout the government. And like, now again, not only is it like terrible that these actual workers, Fed workers, are losing their jobs, so many of them are doing work, performing labor that helps workers and working people in this country. One of the things I've been following really closely is this kind of saga at MSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration, which is under the DOL, part of the Department of Labor. So I cover coal miners a lot. And there's this whole terrible thing where under Doge and Trump's nonsense, they just laid off like hundreds of people that are tasked with monitoring black lung cases in Appalachia and helping coal miners get black lung benefits. And they
just want to interject, like I don't understand how whatever 40% of the United States has such little threshold for just cruelty. Yeah, I mean, like they just can take cruelty to such an incredible amounts of it. Like the stuff about cancer patients and like people like black. These are white people mostly that you're talking about, right? I mean, are you not talking about like Appalachia coal miners? Or is it predominantly like white workers? Yeah. Even supposed like white nationalist minded people, aren't they supposed to care about that? I mean, it's amazing how little people seem to care about the cruelty.
But Mike, I've heard, listening to many great podcasts and reading excellent Substack blogs like the Free Press, that the Donald Trump administration is actually super pro-worker.
Oh my God, that thing. That
we wanted you to comment on that for sure. But I mean, I just find that the stuff about black lung, I think you just give us a little bit more about that, because I just think it's crazy that people don't care about this. They're not up in arms.
So here's the thing too. Like, so many of these more targeted actions in like the regulatory space or the health space, they only impact certain demographics, certain populations of people, right? Like if you're a person in California who tries to pay attention, you're not going to know what they're doing in Morgantown, West Virginia, unless like your granddaddy was a coal miner. So they can pull a lot of bullshit at once, so people kind of pull in different directions. But the black lung thing, actually, that did have a semi-happy-ish ending, because once people found out about it, they're like, oh no. So the context is NIOSH, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, nailed it.
Yes.
They right, they got gutted, and the specific program run out of Morgantown, West Virginia, the Coal Workers Health Surveillance Project. Like, those are the folks that are reading the x-rays. Those are the folks that are sending mobile clinics around to the haulers to get in touch with people that can't get down to themselves. That was like an incredibly vital program that helped the most vulnerable and sickest coal miners in Appalachia, in those areas, which, to your point, like, the majority of them are white. Not all of them. Like, there are black coal miners.
Not all.
But it is. Yeah, in the
stereotypically, like the whole JD Vance story, and like
guy.
And back in the day when we were both kind of like, just covering the first kind of white nationalist push in the country. I mean, like, those are the people they would talk about when you'd hear like those, like the Mike Penovich podcast or whatever white nationalist podcast, be like, oh, these workers in Appalachia. And like, they don't really have any real context about them, but that's what they're like pretending to care about.
Sure. That's the archetype, right? Like the white guy in a hard hat who drinks Bud Heavy and like probably voted for Trump. That's what they want. And those are the people whose deaths are being hastened. Like, those are the people who are having to wait months, if not indefinitely, to have their x-rays looked at. Like, that was something that became a little bit of a scandal. It became enough of it was fucked up enough that Republicans actually started to say things about it. Like, what's her ass? Shelley Moore Capito, the senator for West Virginia. She had a statement saying like, I love Daddy Trump, but like we kind of need that. Like, can let's not do that a little? And which is kind of interesting to see him break ranks a little bit. Obviously, JD Vance didn't say a goddamn thing for all of his stolen Appalachian valor, but it did get a lot of pushback. And what happened was there was a coal miner named Harry Wiley, coal miner in Mingo County or in Raleigh County, who was diagnosed with black lung. He actually, with the help of this incredible black lung lawyer, Sam Petzonk down there, he sued RFK and the Department of Health and Human Services, basically saying like, getting rid of this program, making him like removing his ability to have his scans checked, to have access to that treatment and healthcare, like that was causing him irreparable harm. And they won. They got an injunction that essentially forced the government to rehire about 300 workers, at least 100 or so in Morgantown, to reinstate the coal workers health surveillance program. Essentially, that came down to like they found that they're not allowed to pull away protections and benefits that were bestowed in the 1977/1969 Mine Act. Basically, by doing this, Doge had like fucked up so hard that like they went back and undid a bunch of stuff from the 60s that they weren't allowed to. And essentially one brave coal miner and, one judge who was not a total dickhead kind of fixed that situation. But that's one bright spot. There's so many other dark spots. Like, not everybody can do that. But that was one thing that made me like feel a little bit better. Like, okay, at least where the government isn't actively promoting black lung. Right now it's just sort of passively letting it happen. An improvement.
So despite this, I've seen some headlines over the last couple of years, places like AP News, studies by places like Pew Research that record that Trump has made some amount of gains with unions. And, over this whole tariff debacle, I remember seeing, I don't know this world well enough to remember their names off the top of my head. That's why we have you here this week to help us out. But I guess like some union leaders came out and sort of defended the tariffs or have kind of tried to get cozy with the administration. I could see someone making a utilitarian argument of like, well, he's the president, so like you should try to influence him and see what you can get. But, despite everything that you've said so far, I mean, is this true? I mean, how much of this is just like gawking at like an isolated case, or is there any indication that the labor movement actually has kind of at least parts of it come around to the Trump administration as they, rip the copper wiring out of the walls?
So there's two major examples that I can speak to here. They're kind of two. I don't even know if it's the same coin. Well, let's talk about two guys. So first, we have Sean O'Brien from the Teamsters.
This guy's a character.
He's from Boston. He's the guy. He's the one you're kind of thinking of when it comes to cozying up to the administration in this hope of getting some stuff for their members, or theoretically for labor in general. I think it's more of a fuck you, I'm trying to get mine situation.
Seats at the cryptocurrency dinner at the White House, probably. That's what we need for the labor movement.
That's how we solve
Bitcoins.
it. Cryptocurrency. But yeah, so the Teamsters, that's been a whole interesting saga. Like that's like talk about lore. But essentially at this point in time, Sean O'Brien, like he still says he's a Democrat, but he's very clearly like beyond playing footsie with right wingers. Like he's a Democrat because it's convenient for a union leader to be a Democrat. He's clearly been butting up with Trump and like, that one jag from Oklahoma, Mark Wayne Mullen, the guy that he threatened he wanted to fight.
I would say O'Brien seems like the kind of Democrat who wants the Democrats to be less woke and read that where it was like, do you remember when we used to be able to just spread out and be a little bit more racist? Was that really the worst thing? Like, remember when Bill Clinton and Al Gore had some sort of affiliated campaign group with the Confederate flag pins? They had like the thing, and it was like, that was just a sort of like, hey, these are some good old boys from the Democratic Party running. I mean, I think that there's a lot of nostalgia from that. Like, we're just like when we used to be just like a broader, like we had a broader tent of whites, right? Like sort of.
The thing that's so disappointing about the way O'Brien's been going about it is he loves making a statement. He has a podcast, so that's already a good fucking problem. As we speak,
Mike will talk after the show.
Again, he's a white building trades guy from Boston. And, stereotypes are not nice, but they do exist. No, I'm gonna get everyone mad at me with that one. But what else say about what seems to be his strategy? Like he's clearly like is much more rightward leaning than a lot of union leaders that I think are good. And he's put out statements kind of throwing immigrant workers under the bus, throwing trans workers under the bus. He's clearly a pretty conservative guy. And he seems to be trying to be utilitarian in that way of trying to influence things like the labor secretary pick, Lori Chavez, whatever. Like that was basically, I think she has that job because the Teamsters guy was like, hey, Trump, we're buddies and we're cool guys. Like, you should put this broad in. She'll be great. It seems like that was kind of their win because she is slightly less of an insanely anti-worker demon than the other people that Trump's tried to put in there. So there's that. And I think he realizes that the Teamsters membership, it is very diverse. It is not a monolith, but there are a lot of conservative members. And he has a leadership election coming up, I think, next year. So I think he's thinking to his own future in that way, too. I don't think he's thinking in terms of let's show solidarity with the entire labor movement. I don't think he's thinking in terms of, what is best for every worker in the country. I think he's thinking what's best for me and what's best for the Teamsters members that I care the most about. And to contrast that with a different white guy union leader, Sean Fain of the UAW, I think that's who you're referring to when you talk about the tariffs. That one, he's gotten so much flack about kind of coming out in favor of some of the tariffs around cars and like automotive parts because he is very progressive. He is like, I think he's very good. He is a great leader. in the labor space, and he means it. But he also represents auto workers, and if you're who are dealing with, the repercussions of the hollowing out of that industry and offshoring and NAFTA, all these things. And if you're the head of the auto workers union and there's this proposal that might economically benefit your members, it would not make sense for you to be like, no, fuck that. We don't do that. Because then your members would be very, very mad at you. And it just kind of logically speaking, like, I'm not thrilled that he's like, these tariffs specifically are okay, the rest of them, fuck them. Like, I feel like they're kind of throwing Mexican workers under the bus. Like, I think it is not great that the UAW has been sort of tiptoeing around being pro-tariff in that way. But it makes logical sense in a way that's like, it doesn't feel good, but it just does. And even saying that, I think some people in labor would criticize that perspective, just as saying like, yeah, okay, like maybe it helps your workers a little bit, but what about everyone else? You talk so much about solidarity. We talk about the working class in general, labor in general. Like, yes, this might benefit your members in the short term, but what about everyone else? Like, that just chips away at our solidarity, and it puts you, closer to this authoritarian regime. Like, we don't want to be doing that. So it's complicated.
So to sort of, just to narrow it down a little bit, it sounds like it's kind of a mixed bag where there's going to be some blowhard, egotistical labor leaders who cozy up to Trump because those are the type of kind of solipsistic, self-important blowhards that love Trump because, right, it's like, it's sort of, they want to, they themselves are in some way a mini Trump, and those type of personalities inevitably end up liking Trump and being able to accept his corruption and everything else because they see themselves in it in some way. I don't know if that's right, but it seems that at least with O'Brien, maybe.
I feel like they're the kind of guys that would have fun hanging out. Like, I don't think he finds Trump repulsive in the way that I would hope a labor leader would, which is, I guess, says something about the kind of person he is and the way he sees himself as a leader. Like, I know Sean Fain's not trying to bro down with Donald Trump, but it's like, we're in this moment where, should we cede any ground to this enemy? Should we try to negotiate? I'm not really sure because I'm not in charge. I'm hoping that this trend of union leaders trying to think like, well, we're here now, we gotta at least play ball. Like, no, you don't have to play ball. You can throw the ball at his fucking head. Like, yeah, it theoretically.
I always find it so strange the way these like hyper masculine type, like people with that type of mindset love Trump when he's this like very like he's got incredibly soft hands and
he's a wimp.
And he spends all his time like, whining about people in the media who I mean, he's, you know what I mean? It's real. I don't understand the connection between that and the other, but I think it is what it is.
I think it's just because he's tall and mean and like kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, well, I mean, he's an insult comic. I guess maybe that has a masculine edge to it.
And he's like mean and weird to women. And that kind of man is like, I'm also mean and weird to women.
There you go.
And he'll also say what everyone else seems to be scared to say, which is groceries. That's kind of an old-fashioned word.
That's for ladies.
You don't hear that anymore.
Oh my God. Groceries and dolls, that's for the girls to worry about, fellas. Don't you worry about it.
We've all been thinking how weird it is. Groceries. What's that even mean?
Something that the private chef does on his own time, I assume.
Which is why I support a 150,000% tariff on insert product here.
So it's like, I just want to say something because I want to make it clear that like some of the issues with labor really don't even have to do with Trump. I've experienced it firsthand, and I have a question, just a spoiler alert that you can mentally prepare for, which is about the journalism industry. But like, we'll get to that later. So in 2024, we found out that only 10% of the U.S. workforce belongs to a union.
We're down to 9 now, baby.
Down to 9. That's really low. But it was 10% in 2024 when Biden was there. That seems pretty bad to me. And I don't know. I mean, is it bad? Should we be happy with what we have considering that? Or is this really the gig community, whatever, gig economy, whatever the hell it is. This kind of, Uber, Lyft, I was about to say Tinder, but I guess it's not a job.
Depends how you use it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like these type of things. I mean, is that like the impact of that causing this shrinkage?
Oh no, we've been dealing with union density decline since like the 30s is really when it was at its height. But really, like most things in this country that are bad, we can trace a lot of this back to Reagan in the 80s specifically. After he broke the PATCO strike in 1981, the air traffic controller strike, and brutally blackballed those workers and replaced them, and made it very clear that the playing field was shifting, that corporate America didn't have to pay as much attention to unions, that they didn't have to be as afraid of the repercussions of union busting or strike breaking or exploiting their workers. That's kind of when we saw this speed run to the bottom. And that's also around the time we saw the rise of these so-called right-to-work laws, right-to-work-for-less laws, that kind of proliferated throughout the country, especially in states that tend to be Republican-dominated, that tend to be anti-labor, pro-big business. Those kind of laws make it more difficult for unions to operate and to organize and to collect dues from their members, which is how you pay the labor lawyers and pay the people that negotiate your contracts. You need a little bit of money to be a union. So there really was a concentrated push from the Republicans onward, aided by these corporate Democrats that don't want to scare off their donors, just to kind of keep whittling away at people's opportunities to organize and people's opportunities to win once they do have a union. And when you add in, rampant worker misclassification, as a freelance journalist, I have thoughts about that. And the rise of the gig economy, which kind of goes hand in hand with worker misclassification. Obviously, someone who works for Uber, except they don't, because they're misclassified. So there's kind of like just a tsunami of garbage that has made it more difficult to join a union in this country, on top of just incredibly anti-union employers that flood the workplace with propaganda the second they hear someone might be interested in organizing. When you have anti-union rhetoric coming from politicians and Fox News and all those types of media sources, when you're not learning about labor history or workers' rights in school. Like there's so many reasons why it's difficult to organize here and why so many people don't even know they have the option. And also part of that is our broken ass labor laws mean that a lot of people don't have the option, right? Domestic workers still aren't covered under our major labor laws. Agricultural workers, independent contractors, because that's a complicated thing. But again, the whole worker misclassification thing, like there's the deck is stacked so far against us, and it's been that way for long enough that I think it's hard to envision what it would look like in a different way. Like when I was just in Sweden in the fall to do like a book tour thing, and was talking to like a bunch of like labor people in Sweden, and they asked.
That's awesome. Can I ask which cities? Because I went like in 2023 towards the end. It was a lot of fun.
I stayed in Stockholm, but I think we went to Udbro. We went to the one where the Joe Hill Museum is. A bunch of like cities within a 2 to 3 hour radius of Stockholm.
Oh, okay.
I could pronounce them if I had them in front of me, but they were a little exotic. Okay. But like more like industrial towns.
But that's so cool. That's really cool.
It was sick. Yo, they feel so bad for us. Like in the Q&As after, one of the things I would hear like, we didn't know you were allowed to have unions. That's good. And I asked him like, what's your union density? Like, it's getting very low. It's like 63%. And I was like, yeah, 63%, having it real rough here in fucking Sweden. They don't have a minimum wage because the employers and the unions, they just they talk together and they figure out what makes sense, and that's what the wage will be.
Yeah, you need to travel abroad to really get an idea of just how reactionary America really is.
Yeah,
it's like sometimes like a huge wake up call. It's like, oh my God.
I always say Europe is what the U.S. could look like if Americans had any sense of like collective consciousness or even some like basic ideas about self-respect.
If Americans could read, we would be Sweden.
So you talked about the ways the deck has just kind of been stacked since Reagan. So I mean, we're talking decades at this point of just moments where things bottom out, but a lot of years where things just kind of wind back a little bit. And now we're at this point, like you said, 9% of the US workforce belongs to a union. That's 91% of the US workforce that is kind of just out on their own and subject to, they don't have a good way to really collectively negotiate with an employer.
You know what's sad is that most people would want to join a union if they could. Public opinion of unions is up to like 70% positive. If people could join unions, they would. It's just so fucking hard.
Have there been any other points in U.S. history where there was like low union membership? I mean, the labor movement came out of no labor movement, I guess. So at some point there wasn't really labor unions, I guess, on a big scale or a really organized scale in the U.S. But is there anything like people can think about from back then? I mean, obviously, it's a very different world. People aren't like dying from the measles in mass numbers or like, that sort of thing. Well, that was a bad example to choose.
Yeah, sure.
But you get what I'm saying. I mean, the world has changed a lot, of course, and like it's not as simple as copy and paste. But yeah, I mean, is there any sort of historical precedent to look back on? I guess are we completely miserable, or is there like any reason to hope? Yeah.
So someone actually asked me something very similar to this. I did a little book event for the kids' book in Baltimore at Red Emma's. Shout out to them. A weekend or so ago. And someone asked me, like, is there a historical precedent like when there was this massive rollback of labor rights, when things went from all right to very bad? And I thought about it. I wish I could change my answer now, but I thought about it. I was like, honestly, it's pretty weird to be losing rights. Like most of American history up till now is people have been trying to get them and protect them. The thing where we're losing all this stuff is a little bit new. But then I thought about it more and I realized we are approaching, I feel like we're in about 1917, 1918 or so. I think that's where we're landing right now, because that was a moment when we were in a war that was none of our goddamn business, as per usual, but we were in a war, a military conflict, if you will, that a lot of people on the left, a lot of progressive people, did not support. They thought it was a bad idea for us to be involved in this military conflict. And the government was like, wait, we don't want to hear any of that out of you. We're going to criminalize dissent. We are going to pass a bunch of laws that make it basically illegal and make it count as treason or sedition or like some big scary charges. If you criticize this war, if you say that we shouldn't go to war at all, if you're a trade unionist, a leftist, a communist, like all of these people that became very inconvenient during this time because they didn't support this bloody military interaction that we were engaged in overseas, they got in a whole lot of trouble. And a lot of them got rounded up and arrested in this thing called the Palmer Raids, basically the equivalent of the FBI, right? At that moment, 1917, 1918.
Palmer Raids went after anarchists specifically.
Yeah, no one ever likes us. We're always a fucking problem. But they went after anarchists and trade unionists and members of the IWW, which was this, and they're still around. Shout out to the WAPs. But the IWW, which was very anti-war, they accepted all genders and all races of workers, which in 1917 was pretty revolutionary. And basically, there's this massive crackdown on anti-war speech and on anarchists and communists, anybody who criticized what the government was up to. And part of that crackdown was the IWW being raided to hell and back. Like their offices got totally destroyed. It really put a damper on the movement. Like the labor movement itself was kind of pulled apart. Some members supported this military action. Some were like, no, that's no good, but we can't really say that much about it because the government will come after us. And I feel like we're still trying to build back from that era, except now we're in it again. Except now we're not fighting the Germans. We've got our noses in somebody else's business, and there's another genocide happening. And whenever people speak up about it, bad things tend to happen to them. And I think that's kind of the historical rhyme I'm seeing right now. It's like a lot of trade union, like obviously a lot of radicals and also trade union members were brutally repressed and had their rights trampled on and had their resources torn away from them and were really just discouraged from organizing for a really long time. They had to build up and from that massive setback. And I kind of worry that we're in this place now with, people organizing against the genocide in Palestine and some union members and some unions being vocal about it, on top of dealing with this authoritarian government and this active push to remove rights and protections from union members and all workers in general. It feels like we're in a pretty dark place. The hopeful aspect is that, after that moment in 1917, 1918, things kind of went back on the upswing when the 1930s hit. And that wasn't fun for everyone. But part of that was FDR and Francis Perkins and the New Deal and the Social Security Act and all these major labor laws that we still defer to. Like, if we could get to another 1930s, if we can get through this bullshit and get to a point where we have, theoretically, another leader who actually cares about keeping working people alive and passes legislation to make that easier, then we might be okay. It's just what happened. There's a lot of years between 1917 and 1935. And I'm hoping that we make it out to the other side.
I actually have an IWW flag in
Hey.
in the start of my like in the garage area.
Hell yeah.
My kids think it's really weird. It's just it's like this angry cat, right?
Sabo
like,
kitty.
Yeah.
We're everywhere. There's hundreds of us.
I don't want to like depress people with this because when you bring up the genocide, you're just like, wow, it really sinks home. It's like, how many things are actually going to shit right now? And then it's like a lot of people may not be aware of what's going on in the labor sector and stuff like that. Like thinking they know in the back of their head it's not going well, but like they may be like tuning that out because of all the other horrors. And then you bring this together. It's like kind of like, wow.
Yeah, I ruined that because I should just be focused on what the DOL is up to, but they are part of the horrors. The horrors persist.
I do want to ask you about something that is very near and dear to me. And something that I think our listeners probably will pay a little bit of attention to because they all follow social media and see all the union campaigns when they go up, and they see people when they get fired, and they see people when they get laid off and all that stuff. And I want to talk about journalism. I know this is not the most important labor sector, but it's one that, a lot of us know a little bit about. So I just want to say my own background in this. So when I came back from India, I was in India and I was writing features for all these different magazines and newspapers in India. And then I kind of had to start over in the States. I took a contract job with ABC News, a digital. And I was approached by somebody whose name I'm not going to mention about helping to unionize that newsroom. And or I was one of the initial people contacted. And I was like, of course, obviously, even though I was relatively new, it was kind of a Bernie bro or whatever you might want to say. That guy got fired like abruptly, like out of nowhere as the union campaign came along. So I don't know, snitched or something happened or whatever. Then I did a story that kind of went viral during the Charlottesville time for ABC News, and Newsweek came along and we're like, can you write about the alt-right for us? Which sort of started me reporting on this stuff full time. And I was like, well, if I can go after these guys, okay, sure. And the contract was so horrible. I think I was getting paid like in the 50,000 something range for like a relatively senior position. And then the rest of it was all this. It's almost like crypto or something where the amount of clicks your stories get, like it could go as high as 100,000 or it could go nowhere. So it was like every week was this pressure to get the clicks. And I remember it was so sadistic. And then someone came to me and told me about the union campaign there. And then I met with the union leader. I can't remember which union it was off the top of my head, but not important. I met with them and whatever. And they're like, we're not able to do anything, even though we have enough signatures because Newsweek is going bankrupt. Then I came to SPLC, which is a little different because it's a nonprofit situation. I'm not going to give my whole story here. We're going to have time to talk about it. Some of it is background in my book and is mentioned. Well, things started it was a mess. Like the intelligence project was a complete mess by 2022 we weren't able to do our work. Nobody was able to work. It was just completely, they were just basically stopping us from publishing. They just were so risk averse. And somebody was like, Mike, people know you. You've got a spokesperson, whatever. It would mean so much if you became a steward. And I was like, all right, I'll do that. And I went from being like everybody's favorite employee in management, like I was like, oh, Michael do it, he'll do it. I was on TV. I was like 60% of their media hits I was doing, to being somebody that they wanted to stop and destroy at any turn. And we don't have to go with everything I went through, but they were like trying to traumatize me, right? Like I forgot that quote. Somebody in the Trump administration trying to traumatize somebody. I can't remember what it was, but like they're really legitimately were trying to traumatize me. Once I became a steward, it was just like so anti-union. And now, I'm not in any of those places, so I can kind of just mention them and mention what I know from that, and just say there was all this energy around trying to unionize these shops as the industry started to like buckle. And now it's like it feels like they lost. And all, like, as you know, everybody who is on the far right beat covering that, I mean, none of those people have jobs anymore. Very few of them do. And it's just really messed up. I don't know, bottom text. I don't know what the question is, but like, what is your assessment of this world? Because it's, it makes me sad, because I know the fight was like a real fight. Like, people fought hard.
Oh yeah. That's how I got into doing all this stuff in the first place. Cause I was at Vice. And in 2015,
that's right. I completely forgot the Vice era, yeah. Kim Kelly. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Me too. Repressed that. Now some of it is fun, but yeah, that's the whole reason I'm doing this instead of just writing about death metal on the internet all the time, which I still do, but not for that much money anymore. Not that when you're like, I was getting 50 grand, I was like, damn. By the time I got laid off at Vice, I was making 52 grand after 3 union raises. So shout out to mid 2010s digital media. I got him a cheap date. But but the thing that I will say about that sort of question-shaped comment is that the unions, it worked, right? Unionizing worked. We unionized so many shops between the Writers Guild of America East, which was my union, and the News Guild. Like, so many places were unionized in the digital media industry. So like that part of the fight worked, right? We got a lot of union contracts, and a lot of people got raises. A lot of people got protections. People got healthcare. I remember how we won like really good like trans healthcare for some of our coworkers at the last contract I helped negotiate.
Which would have been unheard of in 10 years earlier.
Right. So that was good. But honestly, we were kind of slapping paint on a sinking ship in a way, because like the media industry was already not great, and it has continued to get worse. So honestly, and this is a little grim, but one of the most enduring positive impacts I think the digital media union drive has had is that because of those contracts, we were able to get severance protections for a lot of different workplaces. So the unions alone, they can't necessarily protect your job. They can't keep the company from being bought by some VC slop factory. But when everyone gets laid off, they can ensure that you get some money out of it and hopefully get some healthcare out of it. That was...
And kind of get a head start for whatever is next.
Well, that's the thing. You're not completely out on your ass. And if something gets weird, like the union lawyers will deal with it. Like I remember my case at Vice, when they were negotiating severance, I had a little bit of a special case because they found out I was being underpaid so much that even the company felt a little bad. And so which is a weird feeling. So they gave me a little extra severance. And the union lawyer was kind of behind that. Like, I couldn't have done that on my own. So I was a pain in the ass to anybody in management advice. I had a great time. But
I think that's an important distinction, what you're making there, because when I asked it, I think, like, in my heart, there's like a more romantic thing there where it's just like, why didn't the union save journalism? Like, why couldn't, and you bring up a much more practical point, which is like, yeah, absolutely. People get severance. I mean, like, again, not a journalism shop only by any means, actually barely a journalism shop at all. But SPLC like did a whole bunch of layoffs that were completely insane and union breaking. But all those people got really good severance and so forth.
It's like the bread and butter part of it. And it's in fairness, some of us survived the first pivot to video. A lot of us didn't survive the second one. I think some of the factors that are driving the decline of the industry right now, from fucking the AI takeover, like we didn't really know that was coming. Or at least I'm not nerdy enough to have known that was coming. Me a couple on that. Like we didn't, unions are very strong and helpful tools, but they are not fortune tellers. You know, if you think back to the last big writer's strike in Hollywood, one of the big reasons that streaming residuals were a huge thing for those folks isn't the contract that they had been working under that was negotiated previously. Streaming barely existed. So by the time it was time to re-up that contract, it became a huge deal because the entire landscape of the industry had shifted. And I think journalism and online journalism is kind of in a similar space where, I mean, the union contract I helped negotiate at Vice in 2016 would be, I mean, it'd be something, but it would not be up to the task of negotiating what is happening and what's left of editorial Vice in 2025, you know? Like,
Right.
I think it's more, it's not just insurance, but at its most bare bones sort of existence, having a good union contract is insurance that if your boss decides to do something weird or your company goes under or like a robot takes over, someone's going to be there to stick up for you. It's not just going to be you set loose into the ether. And I think as the industry continues to become more and more volatile and confusing and terrifying, like if I have to be out in the ocean on my own, or if I can at least have a life preserver, like I'm going to cling to that life preserver like Rose did when she let Jack die because there was room on the door. We all know it.
Is there any, you mentioned that I know that we're all kind of being dispatched onto these like Substack type things, you know what I mean, in some way or whatever, like, just this very isolated, right-wing controlled, platforms. Is there any hope for like gig workers, not even just anybody? Is there any hope to unionize those type of people? I mean, if you think about, never mind people writing on Substack because nobody asks you to write or anything. But I mean, is there any hope for people who are working at like, Lyft? I mean, do they have any shot at any kind of unionization to try to get better because of these weird like labels that they're trapped under?
So in order to really attack the whole atomized gig economy sort of work that you're referencing, we, as much as it pains me as like a black flag kind of gal, like we need legislation to really impact that kind of thing. And there have been efforts in Massachusetts and in California, which is a big fucking thing. There were attempts to get through some legislation to rectify this misclassification and to classify this work as employers and force the people they're working for to actually treat them as such, which would then include them being able to unionize. But that is kind of a tall order right now under the current regime, right? And under the whole like corporate controlled Democratic Party situation we're dealing with. So we need legislation. Are we going to get it? We could try. But something that is also worth emphasizing is that it's great to have a formally recognized union to be able to tap into that existing structure, but you don't have to get rubber stamped by the NLRB to be a union. You don't have to be part of an AFL-CIO affiliate to be part of a union. You don't even have to be part of an official union to organize collectively, right? Maybe you can't get a union contract as a group of Lyft drivers, but you can sure as hell stage a protest or go on strike or go into your legislator's office and force them to listen to you or ask for a consumer boycott. Like, you have power. It is a lot easier if you do have the protections, legal and otherwise, of a labor union. But we've only had powerful, semi-powerful, functional labor unions in this country for like 100 years, really? Maybe a little bit. I think some of the earliest, like most effective still existing labor unions, like the United Mine Workers, for example, they were formed in 1898. A lot of stuff happened in the country before 1898, and workers were behind a lot of it. So one thing I would say to folks who are kind of stuck in this gig vortex, or are freelancers or trying to make it work, is that we still have power, even if we don't have that specific type of protection. I know it's fun to talk about the idea of a general strike. That is a specific labor thing.
Right.
That organize a mass protest, sure. A general strike is a specific thing that I wish people would read about a little bit more. But without being a Debbie Downer about that, I just want to emphasize that you can still organize, you can still win. I mean, and this is a little bit of a like a specific sort of example, but the New York Taxi Workers Association in New York City, they went on this really, really like well-publicized hunger strike a year or two ago to try and get the taxi worker medallion owners' debt knocked down, because it was just horrific to the point where people were killing themselves over the stress of that debt. And that was a union action. Not everyone was part of that union. The Taxi Workers Association, they're not recognized by the NLRB. They don't have union contracts, but they have a lot of power because they figured out how to use it and go around all that other stuff. Sometimes you don't need the red tape. It can be handy, but if the laws aren't there to serve you, then who gives a fuck what they say? Just get together with other workers and make some shit happen anyway.
I like that.
Kim, before we get out of here, you've referenced a couple times now that you're an anarchist. I'm just curious about what is going on in the anarchist movement right now. After, during Trump 1, it seemed like all kinds of just like street actions. There was sort of the popularization of, Antifa, which, like some people
Everyone forgot about it.
Some people who called themselves that were anarchists. A lot of people I wouldn't consider anarchists. It's a umbrella label. At its peak, it reminded me almost like the hacking collective Anonymous. It's like, well, who's Anonymous? Well, it's like anybody who says they are, I guess, is it. It's like a causal banner, right? But that has been, with some rare exceptions, I guess, seemingly just not really happening. And if it is, it's certainly not happening at the same scales and, with the same intensity that it was during the first Trump administration. So as somebody who is kind of plugged into that scene, what's up? What's going on? Like,
I'm not allowed to tell you.
I mean, we've said it several times, but obviously this is a very different world we're in today now. But
it really
I'm just
is.
curious, what's up?
Man, everyone forgot about Antifa, anti-fascists, which is like
Antifa.
Oh
That's
my god,
how Andy knows it.
Antifa.
Antifa.
Oh my god,
Antifa.
everyone forgot about us, which is sick. Honestly, that's very convenient. That was a stressful few years. But, and I can only speak to like myself and the people that are kind of in my orbit and in my kind of community. But like you mentioned, you're not seeing, like, we didn't have J20 part 2, right? Like the big direct actions. Because I think people have kind of...
Just for our listeners don't know, J20 was the original 2017 protests, which where like a limo was set on fire and like there's like
trash can to the
somebody
Starbucks
smashed
window.
out a window of a Bank of America. It was considering how rarely you see those kind of those images from leftists. It was quite shocking at the time, and there was a huge crackdown from the Trump administration. That didn't I don't think didn't go as planned for them, but just to tell our listeners what you're talking about.
Sure, yeah. Speaking of chilling impacts, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think, and maybe this is me also as like sort of an elder anarchist, like in my late 30s. Like I'm not going out running around as much as I used to. My knees are not up to it. I found other ways that I can be useful, right? And I think that folks have kind of shifted their attention towards things like mutual aid projects. Like I know a lot of people that are deeply involved in mutual aid projects, like feeding people in the community, getting them healthcare supplies and masks. I know a lot of people who are engaged in teaching people about firearms and self-defense. I know that there are a ton of people who are kind of in the more radical world who have been dedicating an enormous amount of their attention and personal resources towards the pro-Palestine movement and opposing the genocide in Gaza. That was something actually me and my husband were just out at like May Day in Philly, it was very cute. It was just like a nice labor union sponsored, just like, oh, we're gonna march around City Hall. Bernie spoke, whatever. And we were kind of looking around. We're like, where are all the kids that looked like we did like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, like the kids all in black with the flags? Like, where are they at? We saw one kid, bless him, standing on top of a dumpster waving like, a big anti-fascist international flag. But it seemed like most of the other radical coded people were just in this block of folks like pro-Palestine folks. Like that's the big cause I think a lot of people are really dedicating their energy to right now, which makes total sense. And I think we've also are seeing people that probably would not call themselves anarchists engaging in, occupying buildings like this, I guess the student intifada movement we've seen in all these different colleges. Like that's, even if they're not, wearing all black and reading the bread book, like that's anarchist as fuck. So I think it's just kind of become less, like let's very visibly oppose Trump and more like, how can we be tactical about this? How can we help the people being harmed? Because this iteration of the regime is so much more harmful and so much more dangerous, like especially to like marginalized groups, like trans people and trans kids are under so much more threat of violence and just straight up genocide than it seemed like the first time around. That I think people who are in the more radical worlds who are organizing offline and not posting about it because we grew up and we're smart now kids, I think they're just trying to figure out how they can help people survive, because the bad guys won and we're not getting rid of Trump and his cronies. So how can we make sure that our people get through these next few years?
And big one is also, of course, outsmarting ICE, which is, that's like one of the most important ones from an organizing perspective. Because,
of course.
It's really insidious. We are gonna actually let you go, but I saw Napalm Death.
Oh.
Is that a plus?
Yeah. Oh, we love Napalm Death. They're like the OG political grindcore band.
I would say that like at the show, long intro to Nazi punks fuck off. Pitt went absolutely banana nut shit ridiculous. And I just want to know, I was there in Brooklyn at Warsaw. Am I cool? That's what I wanted to ask, because I consider you, I'm more of like, I'm more of like a techno electronic, like it's my first genre. I do like a lot of like different things. I have some metal. I listen to some Blood Incantation. I don't know if is that acceptable for you? But I just want to know, I was at the Napalm Death show. Am I cool? That is my question. My first question. My second question is, like, what is the anti-fascist? That made me curious. What's going on in the anti-fascist metal tip these days? I feel like it must be like popping off because like I said, the Pit went nuts when he did that.
First up, yes, you are cool. Napalm Death is always good, always and forever. They've been out here like hating on Nazis since the 80s, since before it was cool.
Noise, not music.
Yeah, and they're just such good boys. I'm like Duolingo friends with Shane Embury, not to brag. But
oh, that's awesome.
Oh, he's learning Japanese. But in terms of like the anti-fascist metal scene, as it were, it's real. It's a real thing. I mean, I have been a political guy writing about metal for a really long time, and people did not like that 10 years ago. And I got to hear all about it. But in those ensuing decade, especially the past 5 years, there have been so many more bands popping up that are explicitly like anti-fascist, anti-racist, like speaking out and being 10 toes down for trans rights, for Palestine, and for immigrants. Like it's like pretty normal now, which is incredible. Yeah. And there's also older bands who are decided to be more out there, be like, no, we're like, fuck Nazis, like we're down. Like if you're a good person who likes heavy metal, it is so much easier now to find bands to listen to and to support without having to, be afraid they're gonna pull a surprise, I'm a Nazi on you.
Right.
Like there's still plenty of garbage bands and like reactionaries and like it's just about music, don't make it about politics, like chuds out there. But there are a lot of options now for the discerning leftist metalhead, and I feel very spoiled because I remember what it used to be like, and it's a lot better now.
Well, the metal scene, like historically, has had to sort of like cleanse itself of some of this stuff, right? But Kim, we got to let you go. We've had you long enough. Thanks so much for joining the show this week and talking to us about labor, anarchism, and now metal. You mentioned there's a lot of great, kind of explicitly fuck Nazi kind of metal out there. 2 questions. 1, give us a recommendation. 2, where can people find your work?
Quick rec, just because it encompasses so many things. If you like black metal, check out the new Lust Tag album. Incredible, like icy trans princess style black metal from out west. If you're into like weird grindcore, Chopang, this Nepali / Queens grindcore band, their new record just came out on Relapse. It's sick. And if you like more old school death metal, my boys in Glacial Tomb from Denver are on tour right now throughout June. So you need to look them up. And in terms of looking me up, I just finished making a website. There's like kim-kelly.com, but I'm also incredibly online for just like all of us. I'm still on Twitter, shoot me in the head. I am on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram. I do TikTok a little bit. I'm pretty easy to
really?
find. Oh,
Wow.
yeah. I mean,
you.
but I'm going to waste this face. But yeah, I'm very online. I have a Patreon. And I should mention, I do still write about metal. I have a metal newsletter called Salvo. Shout out to Bolt Thrower, that you can find online too, where I write about all this stuff. So you just can't get rid of me if you care about those 3 very specific things we talked about.
It's going to be like if you go on YouTube and you have like a new hobby and you watch like one video and then all of a sudden the front page is just like, or Instagram's like that too. It's like the second you click on something that's like a little different, I just imagine like tiny men in the control room being like, we've got a live one, boys. Feed him more frog content.
They like this now. This is who they are.
Yeah,
Sell it to them.
Like sometime last year, Instagram decided that like, so he's like a frog guy. So many frogs. I would just like show my wife and just be like, look at all these frogs. I clicked on one frog. Because I wondered why there was a
possible thing.
I wondered why there was a frog, so I clicked on it, and oh my god, what a mistake!
See, oh my god, YouTube just keeps trying to radicalize my man because he watches like the weather and gardening videos, so it thinks he's an old racist white man instead of a black anarchist. So his YouTube is just fucked. Shout out to the algorithm, I guess.